Good morning. I'm Gregory Floyd, President, Local 237 Teamsters. This morning and tomorrow morning, we will be interviewing candidates for the position of Mayor of the City of New York. We will have questions and answers by the candidates. We will have this broadcast viewed live and we will put it up on YouTube for later viewing. The purpose is to find the best candidate to lead us forward in New York City. Two candidates have said that they did not want to participate. One, Maya Wiley. The second one, Carlos Menchaca, who's we just learned has dropped out of the mayor's race. Today, to start off our broadcast, will be Bill Pepitone. Bill Pepitone will have approximately 10 minutes and he will tell us why he is running. He will tell us about himself and he will tell us his vision for New York City. Bill, welcome.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So you are running for Mayor of New York City. We want to hear your platform. We want to hear about you. So tell us about yourself.
Okay, great. Yes, good morning. I am running for New York City Mayor. I am the endorsed Conservative Party candidate, so I will be on the ballot in November on row C. I'm a retired New York City police officer. I come from a family of law enforcement. My father was a police officer, hired back in 1973, became a New York City firefighter and fire marshal after the layoffs during the financial crisis. My uncle was a second-grade detective in Brooklyn. I spent 20 years with the NYPD as a police officer, assigned to an elite citywide response task force, the Brooklyn South Task Force. I spent 5 years as both a tactics instructor and a training coordinator. Since then, I have another 10 years experience in public safety, law enforcement again, and private security, as well as operational management. While I was a police officer for 14 years with the Brooklyn South Task Force, I spent a lot of time working with school safety agents and working near our schools, some of the toughest schools in Brooklyn. So I know what they do. I know what they do on a daily basis. I know how they've been undervalued and underappreciated by the city of New York. I decided to run for mayor last summer as I sat home and watched our city get destroyed and burned and looted, riots, police officers attacked, civilians attacked, some of the most famous commercial real estate in the world on fire, with zero response from our elected officials. Now, I have some political experience. I was a councilman in Pennsylvania for a short stint after my retirement. So I've been on both sides. I've been on the law enforcement end, and I've been on the political spectrum. I know what the city needs. I have the experience. I have the skill set to turn the city around. My platform is built on public safety. Public safety is the building block for our overall recovery, but it's far more than that. Our education system is failing and collapsing under the present administration. Our economy is collapsing as COVID has been completely mishandled by this administration. We have a homeless crisis that has to be addressed proactively. And our COVID response, again, we have to turn it around. We have to open up our city, get our city moving again, keep our city safe, and just be responsible and help every person in every single community across the city. That's what my platform, that's what my campaign is built upon.
Okay. So tell us your vision on how you want to accomplish those things.
Well, like I said, it's about public safety to start with. That's the building block. We have to go back to a proactive police department. We have to go back to the broken windows approach to policing. If you ignore quality of life offenses, if you ignore those low-level offenses, it acts as a gateway to more violent crime. And for those who are critics of that, we've seen it play out under Mayor de Blasio, who has ignored low-level offenses and ignored quality of life crimes. And our more violent crimes have skyrocketed. Shootings are skyrocketed. Homicides have skyrocketed. Our quality of life has deteriorated greatly over the past 7 years. That's step one. Opening up the city to full capacity safely, of course. There is a safe path to doing such. Protecting our businesses, bringing our businesses back, retaining the ones that we have. Making New York City more business friendly, whether it be through tax breaks and tax incentives. We can't continue to tax our businesses out of the city. And our education system. It's about returning to a fair and legitimate grading system, not the one-size-fits-all factory conveyor belt education system we have right now, where we're just churning out numbers instead of well-educated and well-adjusted children. Specialized school testing has to be put back in place. Our gifted and talented program has to be not only put back in place, but expanded upon to give more children more opportunities. And our special needs program, something that's very, very close to my heart. I have a special needs child. We have to expand upon that. We have to make sure the children are getting all their resources and everything necessary to succeed.
Okay. So, Bill, is there anything else you'd like to tell us?
Sure. Well, like I said, as a police officer, I was assigned to Brooklyn South Task Force. I responded to some of the toughest schools in Brooklyn. I worked alongside our school safety agents, and I can tell you they do an incredible job keeping guns, drugs, violence out of our schools, protecting our children, protecting our students, our teachers, and protecting property. They keep the gang violence out of our schools. They deserve to be in our schools. The city's plan to pull our school safety agents out of our schools is short-sighted, it's politically motivated, and it's extremely dangerous. Our school safety agents de-escalate so many situations. They act as eyes and ears that protect our children in a lot of different ways. So I'm, again, a big supporter of our school safety agents, a huge supporter, obviously, of law enforcement. We need to keep our school safety agents in our schools.
Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome, sir.
Okay. Now we're joined by Brooklyn Borough President and candidate for Mayor of New York City, Eric Adams. Eric, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good to see you.
Okay, so what we would like you to do is we would like you to tell us about yourself, tell us about your platform, and we have about 25 minutes. What we like you to do is we like you to take as much time to speak. We like to leave about 5 minutes or 5 to 7 minutes at the end for 3 quick questions, and then we'll thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much, and to all of your members. And my goal is really to just give you an overview. First of all, how I got here and what my vision is for this city. And I would like to really start by saying I'm not a new friend. I'm an old friend. And it's amazing when I think sometimes your president, going back to the days of hospital police and just fighting on the behalf of people of the city and your membership, watching you move through the ranks and reaching the height of the presidency and really engaging in a lot of the conversations about just how this city should operate. This journey for mayor started 24 years ago. When I came into the police department, I did not want to be a police officer. Some of you know my story. I was arrested and beat by police officers at 15 years old. I was a computer programmer. I wanted to become Cisco qualified and open my own firm. But after Arthur Miller was killed, a group of civil rights activists came to me, Reverend Herbert Daughtry and others, and asked me to go into the police department. And I reluctantly did so. That first year in the police academy, Eleanor Bumpers was shot and killed. And I remember just the heated and very contentious relationship I had as a rookie officer. And they said, you know what, this guy is not going to last long in this department. But I pushed through. And it was a different city. And it's something that many of you and your members could really understand. We were having 2,000 homicides a year in this city, 98,000 robberies, an equivalent amount of felonious assaults. Your members who were inside the school system was watching just the danger of children not being in a safe environment. Many of the incidents that happened was not treated fairly, and there was just so much illegal activity that was taking place. And so a guy named Jack Maple, Dwayne may know him, Mr. President, you may know him. Jack Maple had a meeting at the transit police at the time, and he sat down with the commanders there, and he stated that we can turn around crime in the city. The city could be safe. This was a time where every car had a no radio sign in it, and we used to have this thing called Benzie boxes, where you'll carry your radio out because we felt we couldn't be safe. And Jack said we could be safe in the city. And all the commanders laughed at him. We were sitting in the room, they all looked at him and said, it's not possible. This is always going to be a city of 2,000 homicides. He took a small group of us And we created what was called OLTPS, using my computer skills. It was the first time that we used technology and data to take policing from being reactive to proactive and even predictive. A newer version took place later when Bratton became police commissioner, and it was called CompStat, but it was the same concept. And you saw crime turn around in this city. You saw a lot of different movements. You saw the interfacing of, school safety agents went under the police departments. You saw just a change in how we went after crime and our city became safe. That was a pivotal moment for me. I went to Bill Lynch at the time because I knew we can turn around every agency in the city. And just as we turned around the dysfunctionality as public safety, I went to Bill Lynch and said, Bill, I want to be mayor one day. Bill said, Eric, you're a sergeant, you need to become a lieutenant so you can learn how to be in a managerial level. I didn't stop there. I went on and became a captain. He said, you have an associate's degree. I need for you to go back to school and get your bachelor's. I didn't stop there. Got my master's, went at night, 2 classes at a time. My son was born, went down to 1, but I pushed through and finished. He said, you need to get elected to be a state senator or a assembly person. I became a state senator, served for 4 terms. And he said, you need to be a congressperson or borough president. And as you know, I became the first person of color to be the borough president in Brooklyn. And so what's at the foundation of what I want to do in this city as I sum up? Our city is dysfunctional. We create our crises. And cities are made up of agencies. And your members see it better than anyone, the dysfunctionality of these agencies. If it's homeless services, if it's in our hospital, if it's in our schools. One agency creates a crisis and another agency responds to the crisis that was created. Just look at the Department of Education. It creates 3 crises in the city. That one agency, it creates a criminal justice crisis because it's not educating children. And if you don't educate, you will incarcerate. 80% of the men and women at Rikers Island don't have a high school diploma or equivalency diploma. 30% are dyslexic because if a child is dyslexic, the mother must sue the city first before she gets the services she needs. And if she can't afford to sue the city to get those services, that child will hit the street, start slinging drugs, start carrying a gun. Now he's on Rikers Island. 55% have a learning disability. A third of the 18 to 21-year-olds read below a 5th grade reading level. So if we would have done our job in schools and identified the problem children were having, we would not have placed them on the pathway of incarceration. But the DOE also create our health crisis. So you have the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, one agency, spending millions of dollars to fight childhood obesity, diabetes, and asthma. Yet every day in the Department of Education, we feed our children 960,000 meals. And what does those meals cause? Childhood obesity, childhood diabetes, childhood asthma. Eric Adams as mayor, I was successful in getting processed meats out of our school, which is a type 1 carcinogen. It causes cancer. And so I'll convince the city to stop serving that. But we're going to have a real healthy, nutritional diet for our students so we don't feed the healthcare crises. And lastly, we're not educating children correctly. We need a real education. I call it is the first classroom is in the mother's womb. We need to have education that goes from pregnancy to profession. We're going to reimagine school in a real way and ensure our schools are safe. Because what we learned by changing crime in the city, that the prerequisite to prosperity is public safety. I'm not surrendering to that, and I'm not responding to the rallying cries that we're going to dismantle those things we put in place to make our city safe in the first place. We're going to focus on that and create an environment where we will educate our children. But you go agency by agency, Mr. President, and I'll tell you how they're in conflict with another agency. Go to the Department of Buildings and look at small business services. Try to open a restaurant in this city, and if you can get it done in 2 years because someone is waiting to give you the permit to open your restaurant. I have restaurant guys who are paying $10,000 to $15,000 a month in lease or rental, and they can't get the DOB to go in and do an inspection. Try to move a tree from in front of the developmental site and have the Department of Parks to do it for you. If you can do it within a year and a half, you are a genius. That's why they have expediters inside these agencies, because you can't navigate the agencies without them. I'm going to turn this city around by doing 3 important things immediately as the mayor. One, every agency is going to define their mission. Every agency is going to make sure that mission is tied into the overall mission of the city. And every agency is going to make sure that they're not carrying out daily actions that is in conflict with the mission of another agency. So we won't serve bad food in prisons and hospitals and schools. We won't have Department of Parks holding jobs from being and building affordable housing. We won't have Department of Building holding businesses from being open or finding our economy. We're going to generate a different energy here. We're going to get crime under control. We're going to reinstitute the anti-crime unit and turn them into an anti-gun unit. We're going to zero in on gang members so this place can become safe again. We're going to encourage high-income New Yorkers, where 65,000 people pay 51% of our income tax, although they're only 2% of income tax filers. I'm not with the other people who say, so what, if they leave or not? No, I want you here to help us navigate through this. We're going to build an economy where we're going to encourage and attract good technology jobs, good cybersecurity jobs, good self-driving jobs, drone jobs, biotech jobs. We're going to make it easy to do business in the city so we can get up and operating. And then we're going to pay people an affordable salary. It's despicable that we have employees who are city employees who are living in homeless shelters. And I know what that's like. I know what it is not to have a decent salary. And your membership is who I am, and I am you. I don't think there's any candidate in this race that's closely aligned to the life that your members are leading. I know what it is to be a dishwasher. I was a dishwasher. I know what it is to work in the mailroom. I worked in the mailroom. I know what it is to live on the verge of homelessness. As a child, they used to call my family the glad bag children. We used to carry a garbage bag full of clothing to school every day because mom thought we were going to be thrown out, and she did not want us to be embarrassed by not having a change of clothing. I know what it is to be abused by police. I was beat by police. And I also know what it is to protect our city. I protected our city. I'm the only person that's running for mayor that has ever had a union card. I'm the only person that's running for mayor that knows what it is to need those benefits. I understand your members, and your members understand me. I am you, and I am your membership, and I want your support. I have the support of some of the largest unions from DC 37, ATC, 32BJ, PEF, and others. I am the blue-collar candidate in this race. We've had enough white-collar mayors. They destroyed this city. It's time for us to have that LaGuardia energy of a blue-collar mayor. I walk into City Hall, your members walk into City Hall. They're going to be treated with the dignity and respect that they deserve. I'm not a new friend. I'm an old friend. And I want to continue to be treated as a friend and treat you as a friend as we move forward. So thank you. I'll open to any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate your introduction and the history of who you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a first question.
Yes. How you doing? Dianne Montgomery here. Teamsters Local 237, Director of Integrity. My question relates to one of the topics you touched upon, school safety agents. We all know that there's been a nationwide reaction to police misconduct. And as a result of this misconduct, a lot of people abroad and within our own city has been calling for the defunding of the police. You have the city council, you have Mayor de Blasio, you have the advocate Williams, all pushing legislation to not only defund the police, but to also remove school safety agents from NYPD's purview and place them under the DOT. Now, taking into account that there's between 5,000 and 7,000 school safety agents. 90% of them are people of color. 70% of them are women. And many of these agents work within the communities in which they live. We all know that we're living in turbulent, violent times, and school shootings such as Sandy Hook and Parklands, it can happen here. Okay, so keeping all that into account, how can we plan on, one, keeping our school children safe, and two, bringing back the respect and prestige that our school agents once enjoyed? And also keeping in mind that removing these school safety agents from the schools goes against the norm or the will of many other parents whose kids go to these schools. And nobody has even thought to involve them in this conversation.
A great question, and I want to peel back each piece of the question that you asked. Number one, I said from the beginning, and I'm going to continue to say, and I'm often criticized for saying it, but the prerequisite to prosperity is public safety, and that starts with ensuring our children. Many people who are making these calls to dismantle public safety pieces, they were not here during the mid 80s and 90s. They don't recall what our schools were like. They don't recall why we transitioned school safety agents to the NYPD in the first place. And they falsely are sending a signal that school safety agents are policing in school, and they're not. They are peace officers. They're not police officers, and they're not carrying guns. And so we need to have a real conversation about how do we maintain safety, not only in the school. People often think about school safety agents protecting the children in the schools, but you also have dangerous environments around the schools. Sex trafficking is high, gang activity is high, as you indicated, shootings and others. And so I believe there's certain things that I feel we should do. Number one, I would love to see at every school having a public safety committee inside that school that's made up of faculty, students, peace officers, to sit down and identify what the safety plan is for that school. I met with a group of young people last month who they were pleading to keep their school safety agents in their school because they were concerned about the gang activity in their community. I met with a group 2 weeks ago who said they didn't want their school safety agents in there. But the loudest of the voice cannot give the impression that that's the uniformity of the voice, because that's not true. And so before we do anything to dismantle protecting children, we need to have a real plan. We need to do it in a pilot project mechanism, and we need to make sure that it does not impede on protecting children in a real way. This is not a bumper sticker. This is not a slogan. We need to be serious about protecting children outside schools, the parameters of school, and inside the school building. So I don't support the drastic change in the policy without showing me some real ways that the number one, that the DOE is going to be able to do the job better than what it was done before. And number two, what many people are missing, look what happened under COVID. If you don't have those school safety agents as part of the public safety apparatus, you can't utilize them to give out face masks. You can't utilize them for giving out information about during public safety issues. So we need to understand, how do we have a full use of our school safety agents? And until I see a real plan that's not going to jeopardize public safety, I cannot support a drastic move like that.
And we have about a minute left for that first question.
Okay. Thank you. We have the second question.
Good morning. My name is Carl Giles, Teamsters. My question to you, Mr. Adams. New York City Housing Authority has some of the oldest buildings in the nation. The need and the desire for capital repairs have led to previous administrations coming up with plans that involve private developments. New York City residents are concerned about gentrification in New York City. Local 237 members are concerned about privatization leading to less jobs and jobs being lost. There's a new plan called the Blueprint for Change, which follows a public partnership with the Housing Authority based on a model used in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is currently being advanced by Greg Russ, who's working with NYC now. We would like to know what are your opinions and plans of that, or what is your plans for public housing, and how can we repair the needs that are there?
Thanks a lot, Carl. A couple of things when it comes down to NYC. Everyone that you talked with will say the same thing when the federal government comes, Let's be clear on this. The bugles you are hearing, that's not the cavalry, that's taps. NYC is dying. And yes, we need to get Schumer and our congressional delegation to help with the federal dollars. But you've been around this business a long time. We've heard that before. My mother used to say, boy, you better have a plan B. And we better have a plan B. Here's my plan B. We can do a text amendment in our zoning laws to sell the air rights, not the grounds, but the air rights of NYC. The Regional Planning Authority says that we can get anywhere from $4 to $8 billion to do the immediate repairs. I spent a lot of time on NYC grounds, and we need immediate repairs, everything from lead abatements to just fixing the doors and making sure that we have the right immediate repairs. Your members will tell you the conditions of some of the apartments and some of the buildings are just deplorable. And so that's the first order of business. Let's get some immediate infusion of money in there. And I'm a believer that what I have stated and continue to state, that the complexities that are associated with some of these proposals is unfair for NYC residents to try to figure it out without legal representation. So what would I do as mayor? I will allow them to interview a legal counsel, identify who they want. The city will pay for it, but it will be their private attorney to help them understand all of these documents and proposals that have come forward so they can make the right decision. I had an attorney when I did a closing on my house. I have an attorney when I do anything that's of a significant nature. It's wrong for us to tell NYC residents to understand all of these proposals. Lastly, no matter what we do, if it's a Cambridge model or infill model, or if it's RAD, no matter what it is, it must be done with union work, and we should never allow people to come in that are not union members in doing so, and we should not sell off the land of NYC. It needs to remain public housing. That is the last area of affordable public housing that we have.
Okay, thank you. We have a third question.
Good morning. My name is Deputy Director of Education for Local 237, and my question is about the pandemic in New York City recovery. It's been a year since the first recorded death in New York City due to COVID-19, with 30,000 more deaths that followed, with unemployment at a record high, and businesses, Broadway, healthcare, and the housing market all in turmoil. What is your short and long-term plan for our recovery?
Thank you. And there is something clear, identifiable about your membership and Eric Adams. Many people fled. I led. I moved into Borough Hall for 5 months. I walked through your facilities and spoke with your president about getting PPEs to your members. Your members did not disappear. You stayed on the front line, and I was on the front line with them. Generals don't lead from the rear. They lead from the front, and they lead their troops into battle. And that's what people saw my style of leadership as others disappeared throughout that time. Your members didn't disappear, and I didn't disappear. So how do we get this city turned around? Number one, we have to get COVID under control. It is clear that the vaccination must be carried out, as I indicated to the mayor and governor, throughout the entire city. We must reach herd immunity, not only in affluent areas, but throughout all New Yorkers. So we have to have a real vaccination plan that is going to target our churches, our mosques, our synagogues, our credible messengers. And we need to zero in on those communities that were hardest hit by COVID-19, because those are the workers. If we don't get the vaccination to the workers, then it's going to be difficult to reopen the city. Second, we have to get the office buildings back open. Our financial ecosystem depends on our central business district and our small businesses. And we have to get them back open. And we can do it by having clear regulations on how to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And it's possible to do so. Let's follow the science and the facts and not spread the fear. Getting people back in those office spaces will allow them to go back and visit the local restaurants, visit the local eateries, get your shoes shine. It just really feeds our economics ecosystem. And then we have to get the business travelers back in the city. 75% of our hotel occupancy is based on business travelers. They go to the theater, they go to restaurants, they feed into our tourism, and we have to get the city back open to do so. And then we got to deal with the public safety. Let me tell you something. Every time there's a shooting of a 1-year-old, every time there's some type of serious gun violence, it hurts our tourism. It's reported throughout the international media. So we need to get gun violence under control. And that's what I was talking about, instituting the anti-crime unit, going after those gang violence, get them out of gangs, or have a serious precision policing to zero in on them so that we can bring down the violence in the city. Lastly, we need to re-energize our small businesses. 51% of our employees come from small businesses. The last time we had the PPP that came to our city, the stimulus dollars, it went to the major corporation. It's all about relationships. Those large banks reached out to the businesses that they were used to. We need a local banking network using the CDFIs like True Fund, where we will go to the small businesses and make sure they get the access to the stimulus dollars so they can be put back into business, reopened, and make sure they get the support that they need. Access to capital. Let's stop harassing our small businesses with citations and another form of taxation. Let's have a backroom office work by our Chamber of Commerce to take the load off doing the administrative part of running their business so they can focus on just the small businesses. And then let's use our procurement dollars. We spend about $22.5 billion a year in procurement, yet those dollars are going outside our city. Let's have those procurement dollars in our city by using the concept called best value on how you purchase within the city of New York instead of those procurement dollars that we buy goods and services outside our city. We need to zero in on New York City right now and get our small businesses up and operating, get a real employment plan in place, and ensure that we have our economics, the ecosystem of economics in this city continue to be localized in a real way.
Okay. So, Eric, we want to thank you for really that inspirational introduction to your candidacy. I can tell you a lot of us like what we heard from you, and we will be in contact with you. Anything you want to say before you go? You have about 1 minute.
Thank you so much. And we're in a good place. We are going to win this. People thought it was not possible, and we have outraised the entire field. We raised close to $9 million. The closest person is almost $1 million away from us, but we held on to our money. We still have $7.1 million on hand to go up on air. They stated, Politico said Eric has the broadest base of support out of every candidate. This race is going to come down to Andrew Yang and Eric Adams. And this guy just don't respect unions. And we need to be zeroed in and focus on the damage he would do to everyday hardworking blue collar people. And I'm not going to let him sell a false bill of goods to us and think he's going to destroy what we built up. I want to be your candidate. I represent what you think and your mindset, a safe, clean city to raise healthy children and families. I want to be the candidate you want as mayor.
Okay. Thank you very much. And
thank you.
And good luck. Okay.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Okay. We're joined by Kathryn Garcia, candidate for mayor of New York City. Kathryn is going to come on. She's going to give us a long history about herself, not because she's old, because she's done a lot in her life. Kathryn?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here with you. As you know, many of you do know me. I have worked in, why is my video disabled? Make sure my video is not disabled. There you go. you change the platform. I finally got good at Zoom. Now I'm in blue jeans. But you all know my work. I have worked for the city for over 14 years. I have worked with unions in every one of my capacities, whether or not it was delivering clean drinking water, working at sanitation, or at NYCHA, as well as delivering food for over 130 million meals. But you all know that I've worked closely with unions and done very well. I've been endorsed by 2 other Teamster locals, 831 and 813, because they know that I come to the table to make sure that we are coming to good negotiations. At the beginning of the pandemic, I sat down with Local 831 to ensure that we could still do our job and do our job safely. And I have always stood up for them, no matter what is going on, whether or not it was snowstorms or challenging down tree events. But I also have a real vision for how we move forward in this city. I have a real vision for how we bring back our economy and ensure that we are building opportunity going forward. This means that every kid needs to have the ability to be anything that they want, and that we are leveraging both our CUNY schools for those who decide to go in that direction, but also our trade schools, and that there are real both public and private sector jobs available. But you can't get any of that done unless you are working closely with labor and ensuring that we are getting our core fundamental missions done, whether or not that is ensuring people feel safe in their communities, that we are keeping the streets clean, and that we're getting kids back to school. I know that I have the experience to actually deliver on what I have put forward in my platform, unlike other people. I don't just talk the talk, I walk the walk. And we know that recently there's been polling, over 50% of the electorate is undecided. I know that I'm the only one they haven't met yet. And I am excited to get on the airwaves so that they can meet me, because we know the message resonates and we have the path to victory. But I want to make sure that I am leaving plenty of time to answer any of your questions as we move forward.
Okay.
Jeanette, it looks like she'll be our first question.
Before
Okay.
we start asking the questions, because you left a lot of time. You mentioned that you want to get up on the airwaves. Can you tell us the filing, the last filing, how much you had in the bank for the campaign?
Certainly. So the critical piece was that we had to make the match. And so that unlocks $3 million in money for us on top of what we have raised in hard dollars. And so, we're going to have plenty of funds to make sure that I am on the air when I need to be on the air. There are several candidates that have been on the air and it's moved their numbers not at all. Their message is not resonating. And so we have our whole plan laid out to ensure that we are getting our message across. So I feel really confident in where we are and how much money we have going forward.
Okay. All right. Jeanette?
Good morning, Ms. Garcia. On the issue of school safety agents, a nationwide reaction to incidents of police brutality has been a call to defund the police. In New York City, that call has resulted in the City Council, Mayor de Blasio, and Public Advocate Williams pushing for legislation that not only transfers school safety agents from the NYPD to the DOE, but also removes them from public schools entirely. There are more than 5,000 SSAs. 90% of them are people of color and 70% are women. They are unarmed and many live in the communities where they work. These are very turbulent and violent times. The school shootings at Sandy Hook and Parkland had happened here. When they learn about the council's plan, parents are outraged. More than 20,000 have signed a petition to protest. What do you see as the solution to protecting more than 1 million public school students, teachers, and other educational personnel, while also restoring the good name of school safety agents who have been demonized and demoralized by the City Council, the Mayor, and the public advocates.
So if you have watched any of the forums that I've done with the other candidates, I have consistently said that I do not think that school safety agents should be moved out of NYPD, that I view them as being part of their school communities, and also in many cases in some neighborhoods protecting that student body from outside forces that would try and get into the building. I know that they were absolutely critical last summer and came to work every day when we were distributing food and making sure that that happened in a safe manner, you know, that people stayed socially distant when they were on the line, but in a way that was very welcoming to the community. And I saw them stepping up over and over again. So I have been a proponent of ensuring that school safety agents stay in the schools. I view them as being part of the community and not an enforcement arm, that they are making sure that those kids stay safe, because you can't learn if you don't feel safe in your building.
Thank you.
Okay. Second question.
Good morning, Ms. Garcia. My name is Martha Bodnarain, Senior Counsel at Local 237. I'd like to ask you a question about public housing in New York City. As you're aware, New York City has some of the oldest public housing buildings in the nation. The dire need for capital repairs has led previous administrations to come up with plans that involve private developers. NYCHA residents are concerned about gentrification. For Local 237 members, privatization could lead to job losses, relocation, and other PLA concerns. A new plan called the Blueprint for Change, which follows a public-private partnership based on a model used in Cambridge, Massachusetts, is currently being advanced by NYCHA CEO Greg Russ. What's your opinion of this plan? And do you have any other plans for NYCHA?
NYCHA doesn't need a new plan. They need to execute on the plan that it has, because we need to get dollars into those apartments today. They have seen, well, to put it this way, the decision not to do the investment is a decision to condemn. It is a decision to leave tenants living in buildings with mold and lead and no heat and no hot water and elevators that don't work. So I believe that doing public-private partnerships where we can use those Section 8 dollars to leverage the capital investment is absolutely critical. But it needs to be done in partnership with the union so that we are protecting union jobs going forward. And that's certainly possible under this framework. And that would be something that I am a proponent of. The way that I look at the public-private partnership is it's very similar to what we do with our water supply system. The city actually rents the water supply system to the water board, so similar to the housing trust. And then that gives that water board the capacity to raise money and raise capital dollars for investment. And then it contracts with the Department of DEP to do the operations. So this is just a way to create capital money to do the repairs that are needed, but ensure that we still have jobs that are unionized jobs for NYCHA.
Thank you.
And we have a third question.
Lynn, are you still on with us? Next question will come from Lynn Proctor.
Well, good morning, Mrs. Garcia. My name is Len Proctor, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Health and Welfare Fund, and I want to thank you for taking my question. It's been a year since the first recorded death in New York City due to COVID-19 with 30,000 more deaths that followed, with unemployment at a record high and businesses, Broadway, healthcare, and the housing market all in turmoil. What is your short and long-term plan for our region?
Thank you. That is the critical question that is on all of the voters' minds. How do we come back, and how do we come back strongly? And where are we going to go from here as a city? And so I have a set of policies that I have put forward about how we reopen our economy. We need to make sure we are doing the things that differentiates New York City first. Bringing back art, culture, restaurants. I have a three-pronged plan to support small businesses. Small businesses are 50% of our private sector employment. When we revitalize that piece of the economy, that brings us back our office employees to make sure that they are doing what they do every day, which is like, we need them to go out to lunch. We need them to like go out to dinner at the end of the day and really support the dynamism of our New York City that we miss. And I have to tell you, I think that there is an incredible amount of pent up demand to do things that allow us to see other people. But it also means that we're going to have to support small businesses with giving them access to more places in the public realm, to ensuring that we are eliminating the bureaucratic nonsense and creating one permit to be able to do business, so you're not going to 8 agencies before you can sell a bowl of soup, and that we are creating microloan funds for small businesses that have under 20 employees to ensure that they are coming back strongly. But the city also needs to be counter-cyclical, and by that I mean we should be investing in infrastructure so that those folks who build for us can be part of it. But ensuring that everyone has access to those jobs is absolutely critical as we move forward. But in the longer run, I have said that I want to make sure that NYCHA has a Green New Deal, that we are moving away from fossil fuels. That is critical investment that we need to do at NYCHA to ensure that that happens. That is about looking into solar, doing green roofs, doing geothermal, ensuring that we're doing heat pumps. All this will make NYCHA more resilient over the long term. And I know that this is possible because we can use the city's capital dollars to make that happen. And there is also, I really do think, a tremendous amount of federal funding that will come through the Biden administration in this next round. But it is pronged with, let's get ourselves back up and running, but also at the same time, we need to be making critical investments in our infrastructure.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Kathryn, do you have any closing remarks?
Absolutely. I want to thank all of you for listening to me. I am very excited about where the campaign is. When you are talking about 50% of the electorate being undecided, and they've met a lot of the other candidates, and they've been introduced, and they haven't bought it. We know that over 80% of the people being polled want someone with public sector experience who can actually get the job done, who knows how to sit down with labor and craft deals that are win-win. I have been on the front lines. I've done the emergencies. I have been, during Hurricane Sandy, the incident commander for DEP. And then, of course, during COVID, ensuring that food was delivered across the city. And this was in addition to my regular day jobs. I think I had to resign from like 4. I should have had your representation or Harry's representation, because you never would have permitted me to do so much work without just compensation, shall we say. But ensuring that the city comes back and comes back strongly is really driven by my deep love for this city. I'm a born and bred Brooklynite. I come from a multiracial family where I was adopted and 2 of my siblings who are Black were adopted, but my parents were able to raise us all on civil servant salaries. That is nearly impossible today. We need to ensure that we have a city that is livable, that we can afford rent, that we can afford food, that we can ensure that our kids are getting a great education. I know that I'm the one who can deliver that more than any other candidate in this field, and look forward to being your next mayor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for participating.
Absolutely. Of course, it's good to see you.
All right. And now joining us is Dianne Morales. She is a candidate for mayor of New York City. Dianne, you're going to tell us about yourself because many of us do not know you.
Okay. You ready for me?
Yes.
Awesome. Great. Well, first of all, thank you all so much for having me this morning. It's really, it's truly an honor and a pleasure to be here with you all. My name is Dianne Morales, and I am a candidate for New York City Mayor. Over the past year, we've watched as so many of our community members who were already vulnerable and living on the margins got pushed over the edge. We saw our already weak systems deepen inequities in our schools, in our healthcare systems, and our neighborhoods. Meanwhile, we watched as Wall Street and the stock market got stronger. I don't think that the problem is a lack of resources. I really believe that the problem is our priorities. How administration after administration that's been out of touch with our communities has continued to fail to address the root causes of the barriers to a dignified life for all New Yorkers. I'm not a traditional candidate. Mine are bold and radically different approaches to respond to what is a radically different time. The COVID-19 pandemic to be addressed, but in doing so, we must also honor and prioritize the frontline workers who have run this city while so many have had the privilege of working from home. Our grocery clerks, our maintenance workers, our delivery people, and our healthcare workers. We know that 79% of those frontline workers are Black and Latino, and approximately 63% of them are actually women. And we know that those communities have also disproportionately represented about 62% of the fatalities from COVID-19, and that generally those folks are underemployed, they make the lowest wages, and they lack access to adequate health care. We're at a crossroads in our history, and I believe that it's time for us to reckon with the pandemics of pre-existing social conditions that for too long have been reflected in our communities and a lack of access to affordable housing, lack of employment that provides economic stability, and lack of access to quality education and healthcare that have wreaked havoc in our communities. I don't think our system is broken. It's working exactly as it was designed to work. And you don't reform an inequitable and exclusive system, you transform it. I'm running to build a politics for all people, because those that are currently in power have always had the power, and because thoughts, prayers, and rhetoric are not going to create justice and equity in our communities. My entire career has centered those who our so-called democracy has always left behind, those who in fact have always been the heart and soul of running this city. We are at an intersection of unprecedented times and what I believe are unlimited possibilities for a radical reimagining of who we can be as a city. New York City needs leadership that's unapologetic about the need for us to center and elevate our working class and vulnerable communities. The next mayor has to have a clear vision in defending and protecting human rights, the rights of Black and Brown communities, of immigrants, and our working class neighbors, as well as every New Yorker who's been made increasingly vulnerable in this crisis. So I'm not promising to get New York City back to normal. I'm actually promising to help us build a new New York City that has never existed in partnership with New Yorkers. There.
Dianne?
Yes.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
We would like to know who Dianne Morales is. Where did you come from? Who are you?
Yes. Okay. Happy to tell you. So I am a first-generation Afro-Latina born and raised in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. I'm the youngest of three. I am also a single mother who raised my children in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. I'm a former educator. I taught special education in the same public school where I went to kindergarten. And I have been, for the last 30 years or so running organizations. I've had roles as the CEO of a variety of organizations that have worked to help low-income Black and Brown communities, members of the low-income Black and Brown communities, have access to education and economic opportunity. So I have a front row seat to the challenges and the barriers and the obstacles that our communities face, both from a personal perspective, as a first-generation woman of color, single mother, but also as an executive who has helped countless others have access to those opportunities. So, you know, I decided that there was something to be said for the combination of my professional and personal experiences that could be brought to bear to help bring about change for our communities that's never been represented or reflected in New York City leadership before. And I believe that I am reflective of the average, everyday New Yorkers in a way that no one else in this race is. And I have the skill set to bring to bear to create new opportunities for us and overcome the structural and systemic barriers that have for so long been in place to keep people from our communities from truly accessing equity and justice. How's that?
All right. And as of the latest filing, what is your campaign looking at financially?
So we qualified for matching funds, public matching funds. You know, we have been discounted and dismissed from day one. I'm not part of the establishment. I don't have a national platform. I don't have a career in politics. So from day one, and I'm also a woman of color. So from day one, what I call the chattering class has been dismissive of my candidacy. And from day one, we have continued to defy those expectations and overcome barriers. So we qualified for matching funds. We came in at over $500,000 at the last filing, and anticipate getting about $2.5 million from this previous filing in matching funds, with more to come after the next filing.
Okay. Now we have a few questions from our audience.
Sure.
Who has the first question?
Derek Short.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Derek Short. I'm a business agent for the Borough of Brooklyn. Question to the candidate. A nationwide reaction to incidents of police brutality has been called to defund the police. In New York City, the result in the city council, the mayor, and the public advocate has been pushing for legislation not to only transfer school safety agents from the NYPD to the DOE, but it also removes them from the public school entirely. There are more than 5,000 school safety agents. 90% of them are people of color. 75% of them are women. They are unarmed. And many live within our own communities where they work.
Right.
These are very tolerant and violent times. The school shootings at Sandy Hook and Parkland could happen here. When the public learned about City Council's plan, the parents were outraged. More than 20,000 have already signed a petition to protest. In addition, school safety agents have served as essential workers on the front line during this pandemic every day. But my question to you is, what do you see as a solution to protecting more than 1 million public school students, the teachers, and other educational personnel? And while doing that, while also restoring the good name of the school safety agents that have been demoralized and demonized by the city council and the mayor and the public advocate's office?
Yep. Great. So I have 5 minutes. Is that more or less right?
Well, you have a little more because you spoke less. So.
Okay, cool. So I have a lot to say on this topic. The first thing I'll say is that one of the things that I think that has done a disservice to Black and Brown low-income communities in particular is the ongoing conflation between policing and public safety. When we think about a safe community that we have been a part of or that we have experienced, none of us thinks about a community that is heavily policed. And so I think there's something to be said for us reclaiming and redefining public safety for our communities, because too often, not only are those two conflated, but the sort of inference or implication is that Black and Brown communities need police in order to be safe. What is true, actually, I believe, is that safety is a reflection of or a result of communities that have access to resources and are rich in programs, services, options, and opportunities for all of their members. And so I personally have moved from, or have been talking about the idea of divesting from policing and reinvesting in our communities. We've been divesting in our communities in terms of education, in terms of housing, in terms of healthcare for a really long time, and that has contributed to the instability and insecurity of our communities, which then gets referred to as a lack of safety. I know, specific to school safety agents, so let me back up. I've talked about the removal of school safety agents from schools in that capacity. Specifically, though, I also know who school safety agents are. There are mothers, there are fathers, there are sisters, there are aunties. They're the people that I relied on as my second set of eyes and ears for my children when they were in public school, because my daughter in particular, who is the youngest of my two children, was struggling with some mental health challenges in high school, and we had very strong relationships with those folks. And so, you know, I believe that we owe it to those people, to the school safety agents in particular, to give them the respect, the tools, and the training that they need to do their jobs in a different way that is not part of the carceral state and not part of the school to prison pipeline. School safety agents, the Black and brown women and men that serve our children and support our children, are also subjected to the same over-policing and over-incarceration of their family members and, you know, their relatives and their neighbors that the rest of us are. They have been disproportionately impacted by those things. So we need to provide better by those folks and give them the jobs that will help within a different kind of context. So I've called for increasing resources in schools and redeploying those dollars, not losing those jobs, but redeploying those dollars so that they're part of a different system of support that will provide them with the right tools. I think we've done a disservice to our school safety agents by putting them in as part of this very system that oppresses our communities. I know that they care about our kids. I know that they want to support our kids. So I want to provide the right jobs for the right things. And in doing so, I am committed to providing for a just transition, which means that folks who are in those roles currently would be given the first right of refusal for the new roles that we would create in the school system specifically, because I know who they are. I know the role that they play, I know what their intentions are, and I know what they're capable of. And so we're going to build from the strength of those staff members and put them in places where they can be supported differently and actually support our children to move towards a different kind of future. Happy to take additional questions on that.
What does that look like? I mean, you just said something. I mean, that was good. It sounded good. However, what is that? I mean, yeah. I mean, that's an idea. I mean, I got a lot of ideas in my head. Yeah. That's why I stay in my head, because they're ideas. I haven't figured out how I'm going to make it work. But before I put something forward, something as bold as that, because they're employed now. Right. And creating a job, you know, as smart as I think I am, I couldn't create a job. I couldn't.
Okay. I've been I've been creating jobs for decades in my role as CEO of a variety of nonprofit organizations, including a national organization that I founded 27 years ago. Last week I was in Staten Island, and I actually got into a conversation with a couple of school safety agents. A couple of things that they said to me that I thought was really interesting. One is, they heard we talked about this idea, and they were like, yes, that's exactly what we want. One of the things I learned that I hadn't heard before was the NYPD doesn't see us as their equals anyway. They don't treat us as their peers. They treat us as second-class citizens within the department, which I thought was fascinating. I had never heard that before. And so, the response to my proposal was, let us be part of the Department of Youth and Community Development, or let us be part of the Department of Education. And give us the tools and strengths, right? So it looks like youth development specialists. It looks like family engagement specialists. It looks like social emotional support specialists. These are all things that I have done, that I have built. These are the roles that nurture, that are specifically defined as being there to nurture, to build trusting relationships, to help, when you build a trusting relationship, that's when you create safety, right? Personally, I was the executive director of an organization called The Door, which I don't know if you all know about, but it's a youth development organization that really serves children, young adults, 12 to about 26, who have been failed by the education system, by the juvenile legal system, by the child welfare system. We worked with a lot of gang-involved youth, homeless youth, young people who just were really, really struggling. We did all of this without any kind of policing, and we managed to create a gang-free environment that was safe. And this is just about training. It's about the tools that you provide for people. It's about the culture that you set, and it's about building those relationships. And, providing school safety officers with the training and the context and the background to help do that could be a game changer for our young people in our schools if they have this whole host of alternatives and supports to help bolster, their relationships with adults, their ability to learn what it feels like to walk into school. The fact that these are mostly Black and brown men and women is powerful in terms of young people being able to see themselves reflected in a positive adult role model in the school setting. I mean, these are really, when I talk about not doing a further disservice to the school safety agents, that's what I'm talking about. Let's put them in a position of strength and a position of their assets so that we can build on that and transform our schools. That's what it looks like to me. It looks like actually changing jobs and providing the training and the support so that people can be successful. And I know that it's possible because I've done it.
Well, let me ask you, you want to change the school. The positive role models, shouldn't we be educating our children? Why only 30% of the children can read at grade level? And we're focusing on the bottom. I think we should be focusing on education.
Yeah. So so I am focused on, this is the thing, right? I don't believe that there's any one single sort of solution that's going to address these complex, comprehensive, intersecting systems that have oppressed our communities for so long, right? We have to actually approach this from a comprehensive intersectional strategy. So when on the education side, I've already talked about what we need to do to change our curriculum so that, our Black and brown history is not reflected in our schools whatsoever. We have been erased from everything that children learn and see in a school setting in terms of what is being told to them that is important. The richness of Black and brown history is completely erased. The context of our lived experiences, the environments that we live in, all of our strengths are not reflected. So that's one critical piece. We need culturally responsive education. We need teachers that are reflective of our students. We know that the majority of teachers in the New York City Department of Education are not actually Black and brown. So we need to strengthen that pipeline as well, so that we're bringing people into the classrooms who look like our kids. And also we need to, there's a whole part of our school environment that requires healing, because the school setting has been so harmful to our children for so long. Whether you're talking about low reading scores, whether you're talking about suspension rates, whether you're talking about the school to prison pipeline, schools have not been a place that have nurtured, valued, respected, and elevated our kids. And we need to actually do all of these things at the same time, which is part of why I think that this transition could be a critical part of bolstering the long-term success of our children and transforming schools. So this is a critical pillar, but it's not the only thing that I talk about.
Well, I want to ask you two questions. One, where are you going to find all these black and brown teachers? They're not going to fall from the sky. They're not here. They're not available. And the second thing is, I want to know, are your children now part of the New York City school system?
My children are both college students now, but they both graduated from the New York City school system. So one of them is a senior in college, the other one's a junior. So they just graduated a couple years ago.
So the experiment with the children are not yours. They're somebody else's children. Well,
I mean, experiment is one way of putting it, but the system's already failing our kids. So what do we have to lose? I mean,
you could always lose more than you have. Everything.
You could always lose more. That's right. But we're losing quite a bit as it is. If you look at it in terms of what you're talking about, in terms of literacy rates, graduation rates, school to prison pipeline, income levels post-graduation, all of those things are really not serving our communities or our students well. So I think there's a lot of room for improvements. And I think given my background as an educator and as a youth development and as a CEO, there's nobody in this race that's better positioned to actually improve our school system. To your question, though, about where are these people, as someone who worked in the South Bronx for the last 10 years in an anti-poverty organization, running one of the largest community schools programs in the city, I can tell you that those people are working in our schools already. So for example, I probably ran 25 after-school programs. In those 25 after-school programs, there were hundreds of Black and brown staff who, if they were given the access to education and training and support, would have loved to have the chance to teach in our classrooms. So what we need to do is to connect those community-based organizations with higher education, CUNY, and our school system, and create a training and a pipeline system. I did that already in the healthcare field. So I created a healthcare training program for Black and brown young people from the Bronx specifically, in partnership with a hospital, in partnership with Hostos Community College. And those young people were moving literally from homelessness and poverty into careers. And they were so successful that their graduation rates, their promotion rates, and their retention rates exceeded the national averages in the healthcare field in general. So I know how to do this. And the model that I built could actually be applied to the education system as well. And that's what I've talked about doing. We need to actually build on the strengths that we have. And CUNY is a strength. Our young people in our communities are a strength. And they're doing the work already in underpaid jobs that don't provide them with great benefits and don't provide them with coverage, right? So those people, not just young people, are the ones that are primed to enter these pipelines and enter our classrooms. And one last thing, they are going to bring a cultural competency and relevance to our schools that most teachers right now don't have.
Okay. We have a second question.
Okay.
Yes, hi, my name is Nabar Luna, business agent for Queens. My question is on public housing, NYCHA.
Yep.
New York City has some of the oldest public housing buildings in the nation. The dire need for capital repairs had led to previous administrations to come up with plans that involve private developers. NYCHA residents are concerned about gentrification, and for Local 237 members, privatization could lead to job losses, relocation, and other PLA concerns. A new plan called the Blueprint for Change, which follows a public-private partnership based on a module used in Cambridge, Massachusetts, is currently being advanced by NYCHA CEO Greg Russ. What is your opinion of this plan, and do you have any other plan for New York City Housing Authority?
Thank you for that question. So I have already been very public about not being in support of the privatization of NYCHA. I am fully in support of a Green New Deal for NYCHA. I also believe that we need to move towards a democratization of NYCHA that gives NYCHA residents control over the developments. That includes having at least a majority of seats on the board and also serving as the chair of the board. It involves also providing training and support so that NYCHA residents could have first priority in terms of any work and jobs in NYCHA, including any retrofitting and work that needs to be done according to the Green New Deal. It also involves providing, as I referenced in response to my previous question about, partnerships so that NYCHA residents get training and access to not just a job, but career pathways. So it involves partnerships with CUNY so that we are increasing and expanding those options. I'm also aware that NYCHA residents in the last year with COVID-19 experienced a 19% COVID fatality rate, as opposed to the citywide average, which was only 8%. So we're talking about more than twice the fatality rate compared to the city. That is as a reflection of the conditions that they're subjected to, the lack of protections that NYCHA workers were given throughout the pandemic. And that's not, my campaign is based on the idea actually of centering all of these communities, all of these folks in our city who historically have been marginalized, left behind, silenced, bringing those people to the center and prioritizing caring for and providing for those communities first. So my position on NYCHA is very clear. We need to invest in it. I've committed to at least a $2 billion investment. We are re-examining those numbers in light of the COVID relief package and what that could look like in terms of increasing that. But I'm also unabashed and unapologetic about the need to take on Albany so that we are getting our fair share in terms of NYCHA repairs that are long overdue, and also to take this to the federal government in Washington, D.C., because as the largest public housing development in the country, we should be leading on what it is that our government needs to do in order to preserve true public housing everywhere. So I'll stop there in case there's something else you want to ask.
Oh, well, it's interesting that you said that you wanted the residents to run the housing authority, but reality is you actually need degrees and understanding on how something works, because you can't just give somebody a major corporation and tell them to run it and expect them to know how to do it. So I mean, I listen to that, but I really, really don't like handing something over to somebody and say, go ahead and run it, and they don't know how to do it, because it takes years of education and experience to learn how to run an operation as complex as NYCHA. And as smart as I think I am, I couldn't do it.
So I'm gonna push back on that a little bit. First of all, I think there are plenty of NYCHA tenant leaders right now who already fully understand the laws, the policies, and the requirements. They're not being given a seat at the table. They're not being given a voice. That's one thing. And the second thing is, in terms of executive management, in terms of managing a budget, in terms of hiring people, in terms of that kind of stuff, first of all, those are things that can be taught. And second of all, those are things that you can, one of the things, I've been effective as a CEO for over 30 years. It's not because I know how to do all of the jobs that report to me. It's because I am able to hire people and surround myself with people who are experts in their relative field. So while I'm an expert, I have obviously learned and become an expert in budgeting, I'm not the one who's managing the books. I can put somebody in that role who knows how to do that. And we've got to give people the support and the tools to be able to be successful. I don't think that NYCHA residents deserve any less, expectation or assessment of their abilities than anybody who would, buy an apartment or a home or rent. They should have the right to self-determination. Just because they're low income doesn't mean that they shouldn't have that. And I believe that they know what they want and that what they need, and that the city should support them in filling whatever gaps they have, whether that's knowledge around policy or legislation, or whether that's around the executive management tasks. I am not saying that NYCHA residents should be the only ones that work at NYCHA, although I do think they should be doing the work on their developments. But I think that they should be the ones that are leading and sort of driving that bus, which has not been the case historically.
No, listen, Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. That is a public housing. It's not the residents that own that complex. So it's a difference. When you own it, you run it. That is a federally monitored program. That's a federally owned program. And I don't know anybody who will say, Greg Floyd, this is my house. I'm paying for everything, but I'm going to let you run it. It does not work that way.
Well, but we do have the ability. New York City does have the ability to give NYCHA residents more power over the determination of what's happening in NYCHA, right? So as mayor, I don't have to say NYCHA residents can't have a seat at the table. I can say,
listen, we can give them a seat at the table, but we're just saying you can't give them the table.
So we could agree to disagree. And again, I'm not sure that you and I are saying totally different things. I am talking about letting them have a leading voice in decision making with NYCHA, while also supporting them with folks who have some of the executive skills to actually get things done. And I think that there needs to be there can be a better balance between those two things, and we just haven't done that yet.
Okay. And we have a third question.
Okay.
Hi, good morning, Ms. Morales.
Good morning.
I am a trustee and a business agent, Kathryn Rice, with Local 237. And my question today is, it's been a year since the first recorded death in New York City due to COVID-19, with 30,000 more deaths that followed. With unemployment at a record high and businesses, Broadway healthcare, and the housing market all in turmoil, what are your short and long-term plans for the city's recovery?
Great. Thank you for that question. So, the first thing I could say is that 12 months ago, what we should have done is to say to everyone, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. Stay home if you're able to. We will pay for you to stay home and stay safe. We'll provide you with, economic stability. If you're not able to stay home and have to work, we're going to provide you with the PPE that you need and take care of you. And I think that that would have, one of the things I've been talking about a lot is penny wise, pound foolish. We have been short-sighted in terms of how we have managed this crisis and not invested in the front end, which is causing us to have to pay much higher prices in the long run on the back end, including in human lives. But hindsight is 20/20. I still think that we need to, provide security to people to stay home until we absolutely get this pandemic under control. It's not under control. It's spiking and valleying and just on and on. And we continue to prolong that. So the first thing that I would do would be to ensure that people who can stay home, stay home. The second thing I would do right now would be to ensure that the vaccines are being distributed in an equitable and just way. That means prioritizing and targeting communities that have been most disproportionately harmed by this pandemic. It means making it easier for people to access that, bringing the vaccines into trusted community institutions, the Mason lodges, the religious institutions, the community organizations. It means, mobile vans that are going into NYCHA developments and providing vaccines. It means removing the access to technology barriers that so many folks are facing, so that we can actually vaccine people in an accelerated way so that we know we're protecting our city. The next thing I would think about, I've talked about, is the idea of, obviously, we need to think about economic recovery. And I've proposed a whole different model for economic recovery. I'm talking about a solidarity economy that actually focuses on our small and mid-sized businesses first and prioritizes them. There's a lot of talk and emphasis on losing large-scale corporations and big box organizations from the city, but the reality of it is that small and mid-sized businesses actually employ over 50% of the New York City workforce. So we need to make a choice, I believe, and prioritize our small and mid-sized businesses first, because what we know is that those businesses are often locally owned and also reinvest locally in the community because they're locally owned. So we're talking about adopting a different model for economic recovery that basically comes from the ground up and out. And that would be partnered with my proposal for public banking, which would allow for low, very low cost loans and grants, et cetera, that do not depend on corporate banks. Also, the idea of increasing investments in what I've talked about, which is in worker-owned cooperatives. We can rebuild our economy in a way that actually puts more power in the people's hands, rather than focusing on these large-scale businesses that come into our communities, exploit our labor, don't pay them enough, don't provide them with benefits, and then extract our wealth so that our folks in our communities locally are left with very little to show for the work that they've done. So what we proposed from an economic perspective is a whole different model that would center our communities and build strength from the ground up.
Okay. Well, Ms. Morales, we thank you for participating.
Thank you.
It was a nice, robust conversation, and we will be in touch with you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here with you all today. Thank you all so much. Stay safe and well.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
So without any further ado, we have our last candidate for mayor of New York City for this morning. Now is this afternoon. Raymond Mcguire.
I am here. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
How are you doing? Thank you for having me.
Good.
Your format is...
We want you to tell us about yourself, tell us why you're running for mayor, your vision, and then we have 3 questions for you.
Great. I am Ray Mcguire. I am the son of my now 95-year-old mother. I come from Dayton, Ohio. My mother, my single mother, I didn't know my dad, raised me and my 2 brothers along with my grandparents. And my mother's a social worker. At any point in time, we had half a dozen foster children in our home. And we come from deep in the neighborhood on the across the street.
Let me ask you one question. When did you leave Dayton?
I left Dayton when I was 16 years old.
Okay.
I came to, which is, part of who I am. So I came to New York probably 40 years ago.
Okay.
So I've been here. I've built my family here. The neighborhood in which I grew up in, which is, deep in the heart of what was then known as West Dayton. Across the street was the Howard paper mill that used to emit fumes so strong that the only way we could breathe is open the refrigerator door. And to the right was the levee. So we always worried about whether or not the water would rise, and if the water rose, where we would be. In the 5th grade, my teacher said to my mother they built a school in the south of town and maybe I should go there. And so we applied, and I walked 3/4 of a mile to a mile to get to a street corner where the bus would pick me up. And it took me from my neighborhood to the school. And from 6th grade to 11th grade, I was there. In the 11th grade, there was a teacher who said, if you are as good as you say you are, go test yourself against the big boys and girls in the East. I'd done well academically, where I had a A average. I averaged 28 points per game playing basketball. And I was president of the school. So I took a Greyhound bus around New England by myself at 16 and landed at a school in Connecticut. And when I got there, I saw my classmates who had those short sleeve shirts with alligators cost more than my entire wardrobe. So I was there at the school in Connecticut called the Hotchkiss School. And then from there, I was able to go from apply to colleges. And we didn't have the money to fill out the applications, but I was able to apply to colleges and got into colleges and went on to Harvard College on scholarship. And then I went on to Harvard Law School and Harvard Business School. So when I came to New York, I had 3 things. I had a great education, I had a lot of debt, and I had no money. And this city has been great to me. It is where I met my wife, my beautiful wife, who is author 3 times, does documentary films. In fact, does many of the documentary films for Legal Defense Fund, and produced lots of films. And so it's where I met her. We're raising our 3 kids. We have an 8-year-old named Leo. Ella's 18 and Cole is 20. Been recently drafted into the NBA first round, and now is a starting point guard for the Orlando Magic. So this city's been great to me personally and professionally. It has been great to me. When I came to this city, I went into a world called corporate finance, where there was nobody who looked like me, and so I've had to break down the doors and to navigate that world for lots of years. I've had to manage budgets that are larger than most state budgets, $20 billion of revenue in a given year. I have also had to, help others along the way. So I have been able to not only get them trained, but to get them promoted, to get them into positions of responsibility, especially those people who look like me, because there's nobody who looked like me doing this. And in addition to that, managing budgets and negotiating transactions, I've also been involved in the city civically, where I've been involved in arts and arts education, and healthcare, De La Salle Academy in education, New York Public Library in education, Harlem School of the Arts, Arts Connection. So I've been actively involved. So I take my lived experiences and the sacrifices that my mother made. I take what I've been able to accomplish in my professional life. I take what I've been able to do in the civic world, in giving back and creating wealth and creating opportunities, especially for those who look like me. And I come to this moment in time when we're facing the crisis, and those crises are ones we have to address with the vision I have, which is a vision of the greatest economic comeback in the history of this city. It is safety and justice, and it's education. At a moment in time when I don't owe anybody anything, I'm doing this because I love this city. So that's a little bit about who I am, a little about what I've done, and a little bit about the vision I have for this city. My economic plan, by the way, is an economic plan that contemplates the creation of 500,000 jobs. Go big, go small, go forward. Focus specifically on small businesses and creating jobs for the employees of New York City, and making certain that as this economy recovers, that it's an inclusive recovery, and also making certain that the MWBEs in this city who have been excluded will by design get included. And in specific, in 2020, you know that we spent $22.5 billion. 82% of MWBEs got zero. 82% got zero. And of those who did get it, $1.1 billion out of $22.5 billion, and we ought to make certain that that doesn't happen going forward. It will not happen on my watch. At this point, we need somebody in there who's got a vision, who's got a proven track record of having executed on that vision. And we also, at this point, ought to be outraged at where we are in the city and the lack of inclusiveness and what's taking place in the educational system.
Okay. We have the first question.
Yes. I'm Andre Green. I'm the Deputy Director of the Law Enforcement Division of Teamsters. Mr. Mcguire, thank you for the opportunity for us to question you.
How are you, sir?
I'm well. And you, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
A nationwide reaction to the incidents of police brutality has been a call to defund the police, and in New York City particularly, the mayor, the public advocate, Jumaane Williams, and city councils introduced legislation which is going to remove school safety agents from our schools, as well as removing their public safety ability. There's almost 5,000 school safety agents. 90% of them are people of color, and 70% are women. These are very turbulent and violent times. As you can see, there are school shootings in Parkland as well as in Sandy Hook, and that could happen here. When parents found out about this legislation introduced in the city council, more than 20,000 parents signed petitions, protest. What we'd like to know, Mr. Mcguire, is what do you see as a solution to protecting more than 1 million public school students, educational personnel, and restoring the good name of school safety agents who have been demonized and demoralized by the city council, the mayor, and public advocate Jumaane Williams?
So, first of all, there is a complicated issue that there are two at least. One, let me first talk about the safety of our children and the authority that exists now with the NYPD. And whatever it is that we need to preserve that authority. And I would say that the way you ought to approach this is make certain that the principals and the other stakeholders are involved in the decision, to make certain that when there is a crisis, as we've seen in what you've just referenced, as we've seen in 911, that there is a communications protocol that's in place. So we need to make certain we have the appropriate communications protocol in place. And the NYPD today, that needs to be coordinated. While having said that, I think it's also important to not criminalize our school spaces. So I would yield to the principals and the other stakeholders in the community to decide in specific what kind of security measures they'd like to have in place to protect our children. And that's going to be really important. If we put our children and their safety first and make certain that the stakeholders, including the parents and the principals and the teachers in each of our schools are heard, then that begins to frame the conversation. So my priority is going to be for the children's safety. By the same token, we need to understand what our children encounter every single day. And the frequency with which we encounter the law enforcement gives them a certain viewpoint about the world that we need to be highly sensitive to, which is why I would say I want to get the stakeholders involved. I'd like to get the principals and the teachers involved. I want to make sure that we preserve the jobs. We just have to preserve those jobs differently. And I would also say that as we preserve those jobs, we need to make certain that we train and give opportunities to those who are currently serving in this capacity, not only for their existing job, but give opportunities to get trained for other opportunities that are emerging. So it is one that it is a particular interest to me, given my focus on our children and given my focus on our children being educated in a way that today's system is not educating them. So I do not want it to be an everyday occurrence where they have to interact with law enforcement. We need to reduce that. And how we balance that with the necessity and the importance of maintaining jobs is something I think we can agree to with a plan going forward. But it's got to make certain that we include the stakeholders that are most impacted by the existence of security in our schools.
We have a second question.
Good afternoon, Mr. McGuire. How are you? My name is Curtis Scott. I'm great.
Hi, Curtis Scott.
Thanks for taking my question. I am a second generation New York City Housing Authority resident, and New York City Housing Authority has some of the oldest housing buildings in the nation. The dire need for capital repairs has led the previous administration to come up with plans that involve private developers. The public-private partnership based on a model used in Cambridge, Massachusetts, that's being pushed by the CEO of New York City Housing Authority, Greg Russ, can lead to privatization, job losses for Local 237. New York City residents are concerned about gentrification. I am a long-standing resident of Brooklyn, Bedford-Stuyvesant, where I've witnessed gentrification, and it is now affecting New York City public housing. What is your opinion on this plan, and do you have a plan for New York City Housing Authority?
So first of all, this is 85 years of existence, and every year we see those who have been in office advertise through a press release some kind of a way to alleviate the mold, the lead, the openness of the tickets. I got 184 days average of an open ticket. We've talked about it. We haven't been about it. And let's just start with one of the observations that you've talked about, the gentrification that's taking place in your neighborhood, where the existing leadership allowed for that gentrification to take place. Either they let it allow, either it occurred on their watch or they were invisible. So let's stipulate that for one. And leadership would have been much more inclusive of the community, especially those who are displaced, who are most at risk of being displaced. They were not included. They were not included. So when you talk about, and I think you're referring to the RAD or the blueprint, my view here, having spent a lot of time in the NYCHA homes, talking to the tenant leaders, talking to CCOP, is that we need to make certain that we fix this for now. I'm not a politician. I don't manage by a press release that years later, when you check what the press release said they're going to do, it didn't happen. And so what I intend to do, and this is both at the federal and the state and the local level, I want to make certain that the relationship that I have with the Biden-Harris administration, where I introduce Vice President Kamala Harris to New York, that I'll leverage that relationship, that I will leverage a relationship that I have with the Senate, with the two leaders of the Senate and with our congressional leadership, to make certain that this becomes the highest priority. For too long, we've allowed this situation to exist. Enough has got to be enough. We can't manage NYCHA by press release. And the tenants and the Tenants Association of NYCHA need to be involved. We need to make certain that they take on the responsibility, and that while they take on that responsibility, that we've given them tools to make certain that they can help to manage and be included in whatever plan we decide to adopt, that they're included in those plans. I get the narrative and the resistance that has come down to some of the red and the blueprint, in large part because the tenant associations haven't been involved. We got to take this to the local level. And the people's lives who are the most impacted, the same way you saw the gentrification in Brooklyn, the people whose lives are the most impacted need to be at the table. So I want to make certain that I have a NYCHA resident roundtable to help me shape the policy. So yes, I have a view on this. And my view is that at some point we got to say we're tired of the BS that keeps coming out, because I got lead in the water. I got mold in the walls. I got tickets that are open. I got feces outside. At some point, we need to come together and say this is unacceptable. Enough is enough. And my plan is to make certain that you all are included in the decisions about what happens to your homes.
I'm a business agent for Local 237, and I grew up in the South Bronx. I was recently introduced to you by way of your recent campaign ads, and I see that you also mentioned that you didn't grow up in New York, you grew up in Dayton, Ohio, and also that you're a Wall Street man. But my question to you is, what is your vision for New York City after we've gone through so much? We've lost so much, the loss of jobs, the loss of lives, economic loss, the shutting down of our city, all due to the pandemic. What is your vision for New York City going forward?
Sir, let me say, being in business is what I've done. It's not who I am. Who I am is coming from a neighborhood where I've talked to you about a little bit, where I know what it's like not to have. I know what it's like for my mother to debate whether or not she's going to pay the gas and electric bill, whether or not she's going to put food on the table, whether or not she's going to pay rent, or whether or not she's going to put tithes and offering in the church. And sir, I know what it's like to wash tin foil. I know what it's like to put those small ends of bars of soap together to convince yourself you've got a full bar of soap. I say that to tell you, I've never left that neighborhood. That neighborhood is the foundation of who I am. And it's that foundation that has allowed me to come to New York City and operate in a world called corporate finance, where there's nobody who looked like me when I got there. And it has allowed me to go through and navigate that world and navigate conscious and unconscious bias. It's allowed me to kick down that door. And while I was a soul brother, S-O-U-L, I made certain I was not the soul brother, S-O-L-E. So it is likely that I've created more wealth and given more opportunity to black and brown people than all the other candidates combined. And so my vision for this city is the largest, most inclusive comeback in the history of this city, where I intend to create 500,000 jobs, getting people to work, creating the jobs. Where we are today, sir, is that this city is in a crisis. It's in a budget crisis. Unless we have someone in office who understands how the budget works, who can create jobs, the crisis is only going to get worse. And before I left city, I wrote a paper. I wrote the foreword to a study that showed that before COVID and before George Floyd, we had systemic inequities in healthcare, in the criminal justice system, in education, and in the economy. And my plan is intended to address just that. My vision 500,000 jobs, creating jobs for infrastructure, including subway elevators, sewage mains, deeply affordable housing, broadband that 1.5 million New Yorkers don't have access to, climate resiliency, Red Hook, Coney Island, Hunts Point, Rockaways, Lower Manhattan for the 100-year flood that comes every 5 years, and making certain that we invest in broadband, small businesses, 50,000 small businesses in what I call a jobs accelerator, taking care of half of their wages, helping to negotiate them retain some percentage of their New York City sales tax receipts, creating a deputy mayor for small businesses, making certain that we can help negotiate between the fines that they've received. In terms of restaurants, you got 45 fines from 7 different agencies. At some point, this has got to stop. And to make it easier for small businesses to do business here, the red tape is too much. And then I want to focus on going forward. MWBEs, a deputy mayor for small businesses directly affecting Black and brown businesses that have been excluded up to this point. In construction, we have a goal of 8%. We've gotten 0.7% of those contracts given to Black and brown people. I want all New Yorkers to rise in ways that we haven't. So it's the largest, most inclusive economic comeback. That's vision. That's my plan. When it gets to safety and security, I've talked about appointing a deputy mayor for public safety, creating an emergency social services bureau to focus directly on mental health issues, giving services to those people who have been formerly incarcerated, making certain that we give services to the homeless and those people who are serial drug abusers. And then I want to make certain that we give power to the CCRB so they have full investigative authority. Rather than view video cam footage 48 days, it takes them 48 hours. And they report directly to the deputy mayor for public safety and the commissioner. Appointing a commissioner who has my values of respect, accountability, and proportionality. Investing in community centers, investing in community policing, investing in making certain our kids have summer jobs, because I had a summer job. And then education. Education is cradle to career. Pre-K is good, but we need to start before pre-K because often by the time our children get to pre-K, they're already behind. And that plan includes starting at 0 to 4, affordable child care, affordable parent care. And then I want to ensure that by the end of the 3rd grade, every child in New York City can read. Why is that? Between 0 and the end of the 3rd grade, all the educators tell us that our children are learning to read. After that, they're reading to learn. We've lost too many. We've lost too many who we didn't teach how to read. And then I want to make sure that by the 6th grade, we have digital and financial literacy. Teach our kids, and by the way, our seniors, how to operate digitally, and teach them financial literacy. And I want to begin in the 8th grade to make certain that every one of our children gets exposed to, they can be a coder, they can be a welder, they can be a plumber, they can be a software engineer. They get exposed to the opportunities, and they have summer jobs. Summer jobs. So by the time they graduate, they will have been exposed, and they can do one of 3 things. They can go to those jobs to which they've been exposed. It's like vocational training, which some of us will remember. We need that today. So they can go to one of those jobs to which they've been exposed, or they can go to a 2-year, 4-year college. So that's my cradle to career. I want to be responsible for that, especially by the end of the 3rd grade, and making sure we got digital and financial literacy. So it is the economic comeback, inclusive, make certain that all people, especially the people who've been excluded, get included, specifically designed for that. And you might remember what Maynard Jackson did in Atlanta to make certain that Black and brown businesses were included. We're going to do the same thing here. And I will be unapologetic about inclusion because my plan is designed just for that. And then I want to make certain that we take care of the small businesses and make certain that we create this as the epicenter for technology. And then I've talked about safety and justice while we invest in the communities. The violence interrupters, increase the number of people who we have in the communities. I want better policing. I want better policing. I want to return to community policing. We used to have the police athletic leagues. I want to invest in that. And I want to make certain that the education system is what it should be. And part of what I've just written about is returning to summer school now because we've lost a year or 2 of our kids. It can't be that if I were to convene 10 4th graders who are Black and brown, only 2 to 3 can read. I'm outraged at this, and nobody's talking about it. So we got to at some point stand up. We don't stand up for something. We're laying down for everything. I ain't a politician. I didn't get termed out. I'm not looking for a promotion. I love this city, and I want the kids, especially the ones who look like me, to have the opportunity to get a great education so they can get a job, so that there's not a big societal cost, and let us have some dignity. I'm tired of being tired, and enough is enough. I got too much lead. I got too much mold in the walls. I got too many open tickets in NYCHA, and NYCHA's not at the table. I'm tired of being tired.
Thank you.
Okay. We have one last question. Oh, you ended with NYCHA. Okay. So, final words, Raymond?
Yeah, listen, I am Ray. Thank you. On October the 15th, I called my, what was then 94, now 95-year mother and told her that I was leaving my job. And I told her that because she said, why would you do that? And I explained to her that this is a city that I love that's given me everything. It's given me the opportunity personally to have a family and professionally to go in to make certain that not only was I able to do well in business, because there's nobody who looked like me, managing those budgets, making certain that people who look like me had the opportunity to get trained at the early stages, to get a job, to get promoted, to get compensated, to go from no class to the middle class, to create those opportunities for all New Yorkers, especially the ones in whom I came in contact. And I had the opportunity to go and be involved in the civic life of this city, arts education, culture, education, healthcare, making certain that I was invested. And now, at a moment in time when the city is facing the crisis of COVID, facing the crisis of the economy, facing the crisis of religious and racial hatred, and facing the crisis of the climate, if I could take what she taught me, the foundation that she gave me, in the shoulders on which I stand, the shoulders of Franklin Thomas, and the shoulders of Vernon E. Jordan, at whose homegoing service I was honored to be a pallbearer, if I could take that and take the love that I have and the vision I have for this city to be inclusive and to create jobs, because the only way out of this crisis is to grow, to create jobs, union jobs, good jobs, include people who have been excluded, those people who are suffering from drug abuse, those people are the formerly incarcerated, those people who are mentally challenged, include them in the economy going forward so they have some dignity, then that is time well served. This is a life of service taught to me by my mother, my grandparents, and by the examples of those on whose shoulders I stand. And I come before you now as someone whose sole agenda is what's in the best interest of all New Yorkers, especially those who look like you and me. And I'd be honored to serve you. I'm in nobody's pocket. My agenda is focused solely on what's in the best interest of those people in New York City who have been excluded. All boats need to rise, and we need to be included in that rise. So thank you for the opportunity. Go to rayformayor.com or at rayformayor. I'm honored to be with you, and I'm deeply respectful, Greg, of what your leadership has included in the fight that you continue to fight. I stand with you, and the people whom you represent. They are people who are my people. This is my neighborhood. This is how I grew up. It's a neighborhood that I never left. So while I've been fortunate to get to Wall Street, I know the language of the streets, and I know the language of the suites. Or as my Latino brethren and sisters would say, the barrios to the boardroom. I've been in both, and I'm comfortable in both, and that's my life. I want to bring that skill set, especially desperately needed today, to make certain that our future is brighter than our yesterday.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Well, we want to thank all our candidates. Pepitone, Mr. Adams, Ms. Garcia, Ms. Morales, and Mr. Mcguire. And that will end our candidate forum for today. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, we have another session, part 2. We have Sean Donovan at 10, Scott Stringer at 10:30, Andrew Yang at 11, and Curtis Sliwa at 11:30. See you all tomorrow morning. Thank you.